skiing yet? 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 Cool feature. Cool. I turned this into a musical event. Guys, my name's Marty. I'm with CAPOW Guiding, Canadian Powder Guides. We have a guiding business out of here that teaches avalanche courses. We've got a backcountry lodge, Blanket Glacier Chalet. I'm with CAPOW Canadian Powder Guides. We have. You know when the artists have that loop? That's kind of what I. You know when the artists have that loop? How about this? You know when the artists have that. Check, check, check. Okay, this is where I better stand. How about this? You know when they. I'm going to keep going. Hopefully it's not too distracting for our presenters. Guys, we've got a really fun lineup tonight. Some of you have distracting for our presenters. If I push it this way, guys, really lineup tonight. Some of you have distracting. Check, check, check. Is it the live? Is it the live stream? Check. Who here's first winner in Revelstoke? Yeah, why'd you decide to come to Revelstoke? Because it's awesome. Yeah. Has anyone left Revelstoke to go skiing? No, everyone's coming here right now. You did. Yeah, you left. That's right. Yeah, what a special time to be in Revelstoke. It seems like the whole world's noticed that we're getting snow. I don't think that they're getting the media that it's been raining at all, but let's just keep that secret to ourselves because at least it's better here than elsewhere. I've been able to ski up at the Blanket Chalet so far. I've been all the way down to Valhalla Mountain Touring and Rogers Pass, which is all about an hour away. But you just don't need to leave that much, which is awesome. We're really excited for this night. I think some of the best mentorship I had growing up as a guide was just like at the end of the day of guiding, hanging at the bar with some of my mentors. It kind of broke down. It was just easy to ask questions, kind of broke down some barriers in terms of like timing and stuff in the field. So that's kind of the motivation of this, you know, grabbing everyone together, maybe grabbing a beer, having some of our experienced folks talk with a diverse. So Ben Yeager is going to start off. He's a, actually, I'll let you intro them a little bit, but we've got Ben as a guide. We've got Madeleine, who's a guide, and we've got the Alpine Start Mentorship Program that we're going to talk a little bit about tonight as well. You might have seen that Danielle from Parks Canada, Avalanche Control, is going to talk. As you can imagine, there's a lot of avalanche control going on in Rogers Pass right now, so Danielle couldn't make it. But just to kick off the night, talking about State of the Snowpack a little bit, I'm really excited to introduce you guys to Taylor, the CAPOW Operations Director, and I guess the State of the Snowpack Revelstoke Division Facilitator. Put your hands together for Taylor.
All right, thanks, Marty. All right, how's everybody's winter going so far? I heard some there was some we can do better than that, can't we? A little bit, come on. So yeah, winter's well underway. I've been starting to get out a bit and have been spending some time thinking about what my hopes and dreams are for the season. And like lots of seasons in the past, my main hopes and dreams revolve around getting to basically just walk around the mountains with my friends and enjoy spending time together that way. I'm super grateful to get to live in such a beautiful place, and we just have incredible backcountry access here, which is super great. And some of my favorite things, probably my favorite thing in the backcountry, which maybe not everyone relates with, but I love walking up the valley bottom beside a stream or like a creek, checking out the clear. We would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded homeland of the Sinixt, Secwepemc, Ktunaxa, and Syilx Okanagan people, and we feel privileged and grateful to be here and honor the ongoing presence of the Sinixt, Secwepemc, Ktunaxa, and Syilx Okanagan on this land, and we are mindful of how we carry ourselves today so as to demonstrate our intentions to honor this land, water, and all beings. And we want to give a special shout out to the Indigenous Backcountry Training Program that was started by Dylan Murray, who's based here in Revelstoke. So yeah, give it up for Dylan. This is a great opportunity for everyone just to be aware that this program exists. The Indigenous Backcountry Training course is a ski and splitboard touring and avalanche skills level 1 course at a backcountry lodge with Indigenous outdoor enthusiasts. And the IBT program not only aims to educate participants on avalanche safety, but also educate the participants and guide team on the history of the land on which we operate and recreate. All right, so this evening, the information we present are my/our own observations to the best of my/our ability. This presentation does not replace actual avalanche training. Sign up to an AST or CAA course this winter. What you do with the information we present is your responsibility. Use it responsibly. Just like that. That was required. All right, so a little bit about what State of the Snowpack is. Who has been to a State of the Snowpack event before? All right. And who's like how many of you this is your first time? Awesome. That's most people. Okay, so for anyone new to State of the Snowpack, we are a nonprofit committed to making snowpack knowledge. This evening is not meant to be a technical science lecture. It's meant to be a relaxed conversation where people, like Marty said, are comfortable asking questions and just trying to make the most out of their night. And State of the Snowpack delivers this knowledge through free, community-based avalanche awareness events held across Canadian mountain towns every winter. And State of the Snowpack is really growing. This winter, State of the Snowpack events are being hosted in 10. All right, so little audience participation just to see who all's in the room with us tonight. To start off with, who is new to the backcountry this season? Hands up. All right, awesome. How about folks that have an avalanche skills training level 1 course? Woo! Okay, how about an AST 2? Awesome. Who is a forecaster? All right, and finally, who is a guide? All right. Awesome. So this is our community. It's really great that this event can bring everyone together that have different levels of experience. And just this season and in all future seasons, let's make sure we make an effort to look out for each other and treat each other with respect and kindness. All right, just a little bit more about the State of the Snowpack.
tree line in the Alpine. And then on the right, you can see also in the last 7 days, we've had over 100 mils of precip fall there. Some snow, some rain at that elevation, but it's been quite the active week. And then looking at the same kind of graph, this is at Keystone, so northern Selkirks, further up the lake there. They're at about 400 mils of precip, which is kind of on par with what they saw at the same time last year, and sort of right on pace with average snowfall as well. Was right solid, where our November 21st crust complex was born. And we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about that tonight. Nice, which this is all good. Okay, all good. I'm just gonna keep on rolling. We're good? Okay, we'll keep going. This is sort of my one little more nerdy deep dive I'd like to do with you guys tonight. And the rest we'll try and keep new snow. Just to pull the room a little bit, what do you guys think we've got a crust buried. What are some things that we can kind of look at and gauge whether we're going to get some good bonding to this crust, or this crust might turn into more of a pesky, persistent weak layer for us? Temperature, totally. What about the temperature? Comes in wet, it'll bond. What if it comes in cold? What's going to facet? Awesome. Curtis knows. Yeah, totally. He's kind of bang on with that one. When we get, especially when we get a crust and we get a little bit of new snow sitting on top of it, it's a pretty important time in that snow's life, how it's going to change once it's already hit the ground. A lot of our persistent weak layers that we deal with, whether that's surface hoar or a melt freeze crust or faceting or whatever, all these words we can use, very few of them fall out of the sky directly. They fall out of the sky as snow and then change once they're on the snow surface and then get buried by new snow. So like Curtis was saying, in an event where we get a crust and then we have warm temperatures and warm snow hitting that crust, it's more likely we see some bonding going on there. We can think about when you can make like a really nice snowball in your hands. Generally, the snow is quite warm when we can do that, and it likes to stick together and it wants to bond. November 21st crust. We have the crust form, and then going on that crust in the time, and all the profiles we were digging, we were seeing those facety grains form over the crust. And as well, right at the end of November, we had a bit of a clear period where we formed a layer of surface hoar that got buried. It was a bit of a tricky one. Those early December storms that came in, those 4 days that we were there. It was just snowing and snowing the whole time. So we really didn't get a look around at the bigger avalanche terrain around us. But we pretty consistently would hear audible avalanches throughout the day. And then as you kind of moved further east into the Selkirks, it seemed like that activity on the crust tapered off a little bit. Ski conditions, temperature spiked on the 15th, and then immediately that night plummeted right away, which is great. Started snowing, and we're starting to see some pretty quick recovery on that. Myself and a buddy who's in the room here, we went out on the 16th up to the pass in the name of science to go give you guys some quality field observations as to what was going on out there and see some of the carnage. This is skinning up Glacier Crest, which was a questionable choice. Our whole hope was to ski something else and not have to ski back down it, but we turned around due to avalanche hazard and skied back down it, and it was horrendous. There was, yeah, widespread loose wets, all the snow shed off the trees. above meters was either the surface snow below the new snow. So it was snowing that day. We got 5 to 10 centimeters that day, right after the temps dropped, which was great. And above 2,000 meters, it either didn't get a chance to refreeze yet. So there was no crust underneath that and just a little bit of moist snow. And as soon as that new snow was hitting it, it was helping the recovery right away. So skiing was really quite sheltered little pockets, and we had about a 100-meter window where we could do some skiing. So moving forward after that day, which carried right through to yesterday. Anybody else ski the ski hill yesterday? Yeah, it was awesome. We had a great day skiing POW. Not thinking about avalanches yesterday was like a real nice treat. Hazards felt like quite a tricky thing to manage lately, so it was nice just to turn the brain off and smash some POW. So we saw 30 centimeters overnight at the ski hill yesterday morning, and kind of all the operations around have seen about the same, anywhere from 20 to 40 centimeters of new snow, which is falling on our new crust that we just formed. So we now have the December 16th rain crust as well. Like I mentioned, that crust is tree line and below tree line is anywhere from like 2 to 5 or so centimeters thick. And fast forward to now, present time, most people are saying that this crust is now supportive to skier traffic, and we're done with the breakable crust, which is not. And then in the Alpine, together, the not been able to be flying around, and Hazard's been keeping ski tours well out of the Alpine. So hard to until we get a chance to get up there and get some boots on the ground. 200-meter mark is where a lot of people are talking about that crust either stopping or starting to taper out. Along with that storm yesterday, we also had significant wind activity. Anyone else that was at the hill? And it was not our total classic southwest wind yesterday. It was a little bit of a northwest westerly kick. It was coming kind of like right up the Stoke Chair line. And any of the skiing off to the north side of the mountain, North Bowl, stuff like that was quite wind affected. And I found the best skiing to be over on the south side where the wind hit it, and it was really. Our new snow yesterday was quite reactive to skier trivet running on theme. With yesterday, kind of thinking about our little crust chat that we just had from this newest crust at tree line. So when we're kind of moving, talk about it in the forecast section, dealing with our November crust, buried down quite a bit deeper now. If I'm standing on this really thick, robust crust, I'm no longer that concerned about the layer underneath it, as far as human triggering goes on that one. So if there's a little bit of a silver lining from that crust, it's that we don't have to think about the other crust. Now we just get to think about this one, which is a bit closer to the surface and a little bit easier to manage. And this is just a little crown we saw. That's the entrance into the Dogleg Couloir up on Glacier Crest there. Looked like it had ran fairly recently, and my best guess is potentially on the crust. It just gave us like a bit of a shiny look on the bed surface, but was quite fresh. Cool. So now coming back to our notable layer slide here. Now we've chatted about kind of how we've gotten to where we are today. Not much has changed from that other slide. I just bumped the stuff down one. And then our December 15th rain crust up to about 200 meters. And then on top of that, we've got 20 to 40 centimeters. Yeah, so that is our snowpack summary and kind of how. Any questions or thoughts, observations?
What's your thoughts about avalanches that ran on November 21st, and that's the bed surface, it's reloaded, and now December 15th might be really close to that bed surface. You might have a little difficulty firing that.
So he's asking about if we've had an avalanche release already on our November 21st crust, and now it's reloaded up, and we've got the secondary crust right on top of it. Look, I kind of mentioned anywhere tree line and below, if I'm standing on that new crust and it's like really quite supportive and solid, I'm less concerned about that November 21st below. A little sneak peek into something I'm going to show at the end. I've got a couple of really awesome avalanche photos from Monashee Powder. Up in the Alpine, they've had some pretty interesting and like anomalous activity with this November 21st crust, where they've had it avalanche, produce a size 3 or 3.5, had it snow 60 centimeters, and then had it avalanche again, and it produced another size 3 or 3.5 in the same path within like a week of each other. So up in the Alpine, that's something I'm thinking about, is reloaded bed surfaces, and we'll kind of get there at the end. Anyone else seen it a bit differently?
Kind of seems like we're off to like a bad start with a lot of avalanches. Is that what the season's going to be like?
Just a big sandbagger question from Marty. Well, I'll hit it with a positive answer. The reason we've been seeing a lot of avalanches is because it's been snow, which is great. Definitely these layers, especially forming up towards the base of our snowpack, is something to be monitored quite closely as we now get into like 2, 3, looking like we'll get into a 4-meter snowpack, hopefully in the Alpine this year if it continues on its trend. Hard to say without knowing for sure.
Fluctuations, right? It's been like dumping, and then it gets cold, and then it warms up again. So it's been quite a roller coaster, which it seems quite intimidating, but we just haven't had a chance to come up for air yet. But the foundation generally is like, there's some frost we worried about, but yeah, there's some snow. There's a good foundation.
Totally. And like we kind of mentioned too, this like when those warmer temperatures are happening and it's really helping settle the snow that's under our feet long term, and that's really good for our snowpack to have that like really well settled, nice warm snow at the base. So thinking about our big warm up on Monday, what it did is give the opportunity for all that snow in the Alpine where we had that like meter plus of unconsolidated snow, just had the chance to just really settle and hopefully gain some strength for the future here. Hopefully soon. Yeah, really good question. He's asking about if weather allows, conditions allow, we get a chance to get up into the Alpine next week, which would be great. How are we kind of telling the difference between new snow on the December crust versus new snow on the November crust? Like I kind of mentioned, one of my biggest uncertainties right now is the extent of the new crust up into the Alpine. My best guess, at least where I skied, small sample size, is 2,000, 2,200 meters or so, where a new crust will be quite easy to find. You know, it's only going to be buried by 50, 60 centimeters of new snow. You'll be able to even just get your hand in there, dig down to that crust. And if I can feel it, I'm assuming that is what I'm feeling is the newest crust. Our November 21st crust at this point in the Alpine is probably 1.5 meters plus down. So if I'm skiing and I even just a probe or an upside down pole, whatever it might be, poking it into the new snow and I don't feel that icy surface, I'm going to assume that the crust didn't form there. And I'm still thinking about that deeper layer. There's another one beside you there. Super variable. It's a good point. Thanks for reminding me. The size of the November crust, it seems that the crust formed bigger and more robust on the western side of things, especially in the western Monashee Powder had quite a significant avalanche cycle with that crust. They were seeing like 10 to 20 centimeters thick at tree line, tapering with elevation. At the blanket, we were seeing it more like 5 to 10 centimeters thick at tree line. And then of note, when we get into our forecast talk here, we're dealing with a persistent slab problem is where we're really going with all this, with a persistent weak layer buried. But in Rogers Pass, up until this very day, they still haven't called a persistent slab problem in their forecast in the past, which I found quite interesting. I've definitely been treating the pass like there is a persistent slab problem. And we did a quick dig down to it a couple days ago, and we found it at 2,000 meters was very thin, like a centimeter or two, and was super faceting and breaking down. Definitely not like the healthy, robust crust I've seen more on the western side of the river. Yeah. Aspects to be worried about with when the crust formed, it was really in all elevations, all aspects sort of thing, just being with the warming, opposed to like the sun coming out and just hitting our solars. But like you mentioned with the big wind event, I've definitely been more weary of it on the leeward side of things. Just where we've had like, you know, you need the recipe, you need the weak layer, but you also need a slab to form up on top of that weak layer to then get avalanches. So definitely where the winds affected it or loaded it on top of that crust, I've definitely been more worried about it. And I'll finish off tonight with like the places that I'm the most concerned about, particularly our November crust kind of moving forward. It's good questions. Any more before we kind of move into forecasting and hazard and that side of things? We feel like we've got a good picture of how we got to where we are today. Awesome. This morning, I played around with ChatGPT for my first time ever. Very exciting. I made a graph, which is beautiful. And all I really did is I just took the single highest hazard rating for the given day. Like when you open the Avalanche Canada map, you see the colors. They're showing you the highest rating of the 3 that given day, and then put it on the graph just to kind of show how hazard's been climbing and fluctuating throughout the year. And what stood out to me right away is so forecast started around November 27th. Up till December 6th, we either at moderate or low, dealing with pretty simple stuff. We had the big warming event happen, had a bunch of snow. And since December 6th, we've been at considerable or high. So we're coming up on 2 weeks of 3 or 4 in the Alpine, which is like quite a significant stretch to be at more elevated hazard. And then on December 12th is when the persistent slab problem was added to the bulletin in our region here. So that's talking about our November crust. When I talk about the November crust as a persistent slab, I'm sort of lumping in the December 1st surface ore as well, given it's a bit spotty and harder to find, and that, you know, the November crust was down 140 and the surface ore was down 120. For us in the field, it didn't make a big difference to us whether we were triggering it on one or the other. So we more or less kind of clumped the two together for simplicity's sake. You know, an avalanche at 120 centimeters deep is basically the same as 140 centimeters deep. They're both big problems. So ourselves as guides, and I think in the public bulletin, that's what they've been doing as well. It's just kind of lumping them into the same thing. So that kind of came into our world on the 12th after we saw those first big snowfalls on the crust and see the first big cycles happen on it. Yeah, so we'll just get into, this is the avalanche forecast from Avalanche Canada that was published today at 4 p.m. Anybody look at it before they came? What are we at for tomorrow? Any guesses? High, close. We're going to be at considerable at all elevations tomorrow. This is the forecaster message. So when you open up that bulletin, this is the first thing you get. There's a lot of good information in the bulletin. There's a couple things in particular that I pay really close attention to. One of them is this headliner's forecast, the forecaster's headline right at the top. This is a chance where the forecaster gets to like tell us how they're feeling. They're not just like clicking these select boxes to auto-populate pages. So this is like picture talking to your friend or like a handoff with another guide. This is us talking to each other on a human level about how we're feeling, what's going on. So storm snow continues to accumulate over a crust, creating dangerous avalanche conditions. Avoid avalanche terrain, stick to low angle, and back off if you see signs of instability. So if I hear somebody say that to me in the field, that like stands out a lot. It's like, yeah, we're gonna have avalanches today, and I'm looking for all our classic signs. They rated us at 3 times 3 tomorrow, so considerable at the Alpine, tree line, and below tree line. An interesting thing with our Avalanche Canada bulletin and how they out at 4 p.m. the night before. So the forecast you would look at right now is valid for tomorrow. And if they have a forecaster that wakes up super early, 4 a.m. or something like that, they check all the weather stations out there, webcams, just to see that their forecast from the night before is accurate and there doesn't need to be a change. I would even anticipate tomorrow, you might open this, say we get another 20 tonight or more than is forecasted, you would open this up and see it bumped up to high. And they'll put some note there like updated at 6 a.m., snowed more than we thought, was windier than we thought, whatever it was. So definitely check it the night before. That means you don't have to look at it in the morning. But if you go out to your car in the morning and you're like, wow, we were supposed to get 5 last night and there's like 30 on my car, I might relook at the bulletin and see if they've adjusted, because they will calibrate it in the morning. So 3 times 3 for tomorrow with 2 avalanche problems. So our first one is just our storm slab problem. They've got it at all elevations, all aspects. They're putting the chances of avalanches at very likely, which means quite a bit to me. I always, with this likelihood one, I think about like if I was going to invite somebody over for a dinner party and they were going to tell me if they were going to come or not. If we look on the left side, they're like, yeah, it's unlikely to possible that I show up. I'm like not really to see them. But if they say it's likely to very likely that I'll be there, I'm like 100% expecting to see them. So tomorrow I 100% expect to be seeing some avalanches. And then looking at our expected size, the way I like to look at this one is like, if I was going to get in a fight at the bar tonight, I want to know how big the other guy's going to be. Knowing that I can only handle size 1 to 1.5 as a human, really, before it turns into a big problem for me. So they're talking about size 1 to 3.5 avalanches tomorrow. So those are guys I do not want to be messing with in the bar. And there's a very likely chance we're going to see them there. So that all stands out to me quite a bit as a bit of a tricky day. And then they say storm snow is expected to be reactive to natural and human triggers, especially where continued loading from the wind is observed. So pretty normal. You see a storm slab problem while it's like actively storming like this. Some people get into a classic like it's a storm slab, it's a wind slab, whatever. During the storm, it's often pretty normal to lump them in. So down in that 1 meter to 150 centimeters, probably deeper in a lot of spots at this point. Alpine and at tree line. So below tree line, we've got that really healthy, robust crust formed up a few days ago, kind of bridging over those deeper, weaker layers. On all aspects, any thoughts as to why this particular avalanche might be a bit more unlikely? They've got the other one at very likely, this one at unlikely. Yeah, totally. Supported by that new crust. So kind of going up into tree line. And like I said, again, the Alpine, we're a bit of a gray area there. Looking around on the InfoX today in the last couple of days, like I kind of already mentioned, a lot of that new snow that's fallen on our most recent crust has also been quite reactive. Either a storm slab or a loose dry, anything like that has been running on there. So I would anticipate in the in the next few days, we see this either switch to the December 16th crust or they'll add a second one in or whatever, but bit of a transitional time with not a ton of observations coming in about the new crust, just with challenging weather.
What's the InfoX?
The InfoX, yes. The InfoX is a fantastic tool that Avalanche professionals get to use. It's for the information exchange is what it stands for. So basically anyone guiding, anyone ski patrolling, anyone doing forecasting, highways, mines, whatever it might be, anyone working in avalanche terrain, we submit all of our observations on the InfoX twice a day. So we get a chance to see everybody else's avalanche reactivity from the day. We share ours, weather observations and all that stuff. And a good chunk of the information that makes it into the public avalanche bulletin comes from the InfoX. So the way you guys can kind of think about that, these days as recreationalists, we can maybe focus a little bit less on like snowpack observations and snow pit tests, column tests, all this stuff, especially here in Revelstoke, because there are so many guides and operators and forecasters working in the valley. So the data that we get here is backed up just by the sheer amount of it. There's a lot of people out there getting these observations, and a lot of that stuff is what comes into the bulletin. So then as a recreationalist, I get to focus more on the terrain that I'm choosing to go skiing, opposed to the super nerdy science stuff going on underneath my feet. Right. Remain capable of producing large avalanches where there's no supportive crust. So like we've talked about, that bridging strength from a most recent one, which again is going to be super easy to find. Flip your pole upside down, jam it in the snow. If you don't, you can likely assume that the crust just didn't make it up there. So their terrain and travel advice, continue to make conservative terrain choices while the storm snow settles and re-stabilizes or just stabilizes. Watch for newly formed and reactive wind slabs as you transit into wind-affected terrain. So if I'm out there walking around, it's been like really nice soft pow underneath my feet, trail breaking, and I start to walk out into something more open and now it's starting to feel like really stiff. I'm seeing a little bit of shooting cracks. It's got that upside down sort of feel to it. The trail braking probably gets a lot harder. Those are all big obvious signs that I'm stepping into some wind affected terrain. Don't let the storm day fever lure you into consequential terrain. One thing I think that's been a little bit easier about managing avalanche hazard and not skiing big gigantic terrain is the skiing is really good in the trees right now. So we're not also getting pushed around by like challenging ski conditions. So it's quite easy to make simple terrain choices and have a fantastic day right now, which is a really nice thing. A couple other notes that I just added on my own. Two things that I'm really thinking about the next few days moving forward is really managing my overhead hazard. So I'm thinking particularly about skiing in Rogers Pass. You know, I'm sure a lot of people in this room have been up Connaught Creek, and when you're up there, you're walking under like 8 or 10 or more significant avalanche paths that can run all the way to Valley Bottom. So I'm really trying not to stick my head out and walk across something like that the next few days. And along with that, I'm being super cautious in any connected terrain. It's kind of the word that I've been using with other guides lately to communicate how we're feeling. So any terrain that's capable of producing like a size 2 avalanche or bigger. So it's well connected across the top. It looks smooth. It looks open. It probably looks like really good ski. Weary of that connected terrain where we can actually really produce big avalanches. So their avalanche summary sounds a lot like what I've been kind of saying the last little bit here. So numerous storm slabs reported yesterday, Thursday, or today, Thursday in Revelstoke involving the new storm snow. On Wednesday, several large storm slabs were reported, both human and talk, and he said that they can see data on how far people scroll down the forecast page. Turns out I pay a lot of attention to this. Again, it's a time I think where they get to like communicate some uncertainty, which sort of like shows me what questions they have, which then lets me know what questions should I have going into the field today. So they put their confidence at moderate. It's a 3-part scale: low, moderate, high. And uncertainty is due to how quickly the snowpack will recover and gain strength. Again, it's just been a very dynamic week, lots of change, lots of rapid load. So we just kind of need to give this snowpack a bit of time to settle and see which direction it wants to go. Just a couple more things for you guys. These are some photos, some notable avalanches that came out of Monashee Powder Snowcats. So that November 21st crust, particularly December 9th, 10th, 11th there during the big, first big snowfalls, they saw some very significant avalanches go down in their tenure. a few of them running further than the current ownership group of 25 years has ever seen them go. Lots of them, when I saw them on the InfoX, knowing the terrain really well, was like blown away that they were making it this far. Especially with everyone else around them not seeing as similar of avalanches. So they kind of, in my opinion, they got it the worst with this crust and their cycles on that. Like I said earlier, they've had reloaded bed surfaces produce size 3s. They've had that happen a couple of times, which is pretty interesting. If we think about those facets, had all that snow on it, it avalanched. Any snow remaining on that bed surface is shallow, exposed to colder temps, likely to refacet right away, gets buried by new snow, and then you just get that kind of continuous problem. So they've seen that happen a couple times. They've also seen where they had surfaces avalanching. So they had one that was super interesting. Guide goes into like an open tree line feature in a burned area, so quite open, on a nice big roll, definitely capable of producing a size 2. Does a ski cut, cleans it out kind of how you would expect. We get a 30, 40 centimeter storm slab to go, make it safe for guests to enter the slope. And then the 10th skier in that group hit that bed surface, which was like a bit of a rime crust kind of weird thing going on, which was about 50 above the November crust. They skied onto that bed surface and then triggered the November 21st crust and had it go down below that. So super interesting. I've definitely never experienced that. Generally after you like ski cut something like that, you're feeling pretty good. So some fairly anomalous things going on. A couple photos because we all like those. This is basically all the same avalanche. Oh, nice. The crown extends all the way across this whole start zone up here, which is pretty bread and butter ski terrain for us. Ran all the way down to this lake, which in my 5 years there, maybe the furthest I've seen it get was like up here. This is like 20, 25 degree terrain for a couple hundred meters. So it made it all the way through that, ripped out a bunch of trees. We got a bit of glading done, which is nice. But a really significant avalanche. Generally standing down in this meadow is like a fairly safe place to be standing in a big storm day there. And they saw that one happen on the crust, all on these like really classic steep, unsupported, cliffy features up high. And like I said, these are all from the same avalanche. So it would have been, 300-400 meters plus wide, size 3.5, pushing size 4 for that feature, and like a meter plus deep in a lot of spots. There's the really good picture of the whole thing there. And yeah, like this is all pretty classic bread and butter terrain that there's plenty of storm days you feel generally pretty okay in there. So it's pretty, yeah, it was amazing to see it produce something like that. It's been a long time since it's done it. So my last couple things for you guys tonight, just sort of my thoughts and feelings moving forward, what's going on with our weather and hazard for the next little bit. It's been a challenging week, especially early in our season. It didn't feel like we got much of a warm up into like, we got warm up for our legs, but we didn't get much warm up for like managing avalanche hazard. We just got like straight into it right away. We're just going to continue to do that for the next little bit. So personally, I found that quite challenging. I felt like all week, this last week, I just turned around anytime I tried to go ski anything. Just too much uncertainty for me to feel comfortable at doing it. So changing lots of plans and just feeling like highly uncertain walking around out there, which is not a very comfortable place to be. With those deeper persistent weak layers, we talked about they're getting down a meter 50 at this point. It's really turning into like a bit of a lower probability, but very high consequence scenario, which becomes really tricky to manage. Because there's, again, a small chance you're going to do it, but if it happens, it's going to be consequential. It's been an extremely dynamic period with high levels of variability. Again, talking about our crust being more firm over there, not in the Selkirks. Rain to ridgetop here, but not over there. This valley gets 20, that one gets 40. It's just like there's a lot going on for our simple little brains to process. So that's also felt very difficult. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm being extra cautious in connected terrain and those shallow areas around in the Alpine, so ridges, anywhere where it looks like the wind has really swept stuff down there, and large overhead hazards. And I'm just keeping it extra simple and allowing time for this snowpack to adjust and heal. Yeah. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Like how has anyone else felt like the avalanche hazard has been challenging to manage lately? Yeah, which is, have anyone else had any other sort of strategies, thoughts the last little bit here? Yeah. Not south of town. No. Marty has. Yeah. Yeah.
In general, the snowpack, like everywhere, is pretty juvenile. You know, it's like it really needs some time to settle out. I think Ben hit on this quite well. It's like I think there's just a lot. Everyone else find this quite complex, intimidating, and it is. And I think the thing that we can do, the thing we can control is terrain. I think right now a lot of it doesn't matter how good you are in the snow. Snow is always going to be an inexact science. So when I get intimidated. Two spots. And luckily the skiing's really good in there. So that's been the easiest way to mitigate this, not sticking the neck out. But we did not find below that November 21st frost, didn't feel as much of a frost, more than I really think that this MTS zone was, I don't know, hot spot for it. But one thing to highlight too, we won't be as concerned about those lower layers unless we have significant weather input. You guys know the 4 weather inputs that affect massive change in the Avalanche world? It's like precip.
I heard temperature, yeah.
Temperature, wind. Yeah, exactly. I think the big one we'll be waiting for would be like solar, which is really going to be happening until like later in February.
Yeah. Hang out. Yeah. There's some big hitters in here right now. Cool. So what's coming? We got some more weather coming, more snow, which is great. Looks like we might get up to 20 centimeters by the end of tomorrow, and then maybe up towards 40 by the end of the weekend, by Sunday there. Tonight, that looks like it's going to come with really strong southwest winds, strong to extreme even, so like 75 plus kilometers an hour up high overnight, and then remaining pretty gusty all weekend. Our temperatures are dropping, which is awesome. I was seeing anywhere from -10 to like up to -15 in the Alpine the next few days, which is great. That means all of our precip is going to continue to be white and snowy and fluffy. And that cycle
mentors. And yeah, just discovered this awesome program called the Alpine Start program. It's a mentorship program organized by the ACC, the Alpine Club of Canada. And the idea is to reduce barriers to entry. The idea is to connect newer backcountry skiers and snowboarders with experienced mentors in the Revelstoke and surrounding area. So we want to build a supportive, inclusive, and safe mountain community, which we're all doing here tonight. So what does it take? So like right now, we are looking for mentors. So I'm looking at all of you that have your AST2s. But yeah, there is there's a couple requirements to go through, but mainly we have a weekend refresher, like a Saturday refresher, to refresh on your mentorship skills. And then, yeah, the idea is to be available about 2 days per month to be able to provide mentorship and meet up with your mentee. One of the requirements is for a mentor is AST2 and also having a valid first aid certificate, just to make sure, you know, you can be safe out there. Yeah, there's a list of requirements over there. And for mentees, the minimum requirement is your AST1. So take those courses that Marty was talking about. And yeah, there's a bit more of all the requirements. You can find that all online. There's some QR codes at the end of the slide. And yeah, one of the perks is you get to teach good stewardship practices, build confidence in your own decision making, and get some outdoor leadership experience and all of that. And for mentees, they get to have a satisfying time in the backcountry and make some friends, hopefully, in the process. If you join the program, whether you're a mentor or mentee, you will be able to get a free entry to our Split Ski Fest. Have a couple trips and we're coming up with the ACC. That's one of them. We have an AST2 courses happening and advanced decision-making courses, as well as glacier and crevasse rescue courses, and the Botu Yoho Traverse as well. So that's pretty much it. That's how you can apply if you want some more details or if you want to join. Yeah, any questions? Cool. I guess intermission time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That was awesome.
Sorry.
I think we can keep that up, right? Yeah.
I want to keep it.
Cool. Guys, let's take a quick break to pee, grab a beer, and then after the intermission, we've got Madeleine coming up, who's a total badass ski guide. She's going to talk a lot about some personal experiences, the Mountain Muskox program, but totally worth sticking around. We'll be quick, maybe like 10 minutes. I bet that bar's going to be busy. Thanks a lot.
his and Wright Legacy Fund. So if you're interested or would like to keep seeing these amazing things continue for generations to come, there is a QR code to scan and donate as well. But yeah, he was a great guy. So we're sad to have lost him. I don't have the clickety thing.
Oh, it's there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. See if I can. Okay, so what happens after post-incident support? We have gotten really good at being able to help each other forecast avalanches. We've got a lot of information out there that lets us know about the size, what we're going to be most likely to trigger, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not quite at the same point yet with what happens after an avalanche, especially when there are people involved and then there is either an injury, whether it's physical or emotional, psychological, or potentially a fatality as well. So I'm going to be bringing to you 2 different incidents that I was involved in and talking a little bit more about the aftermath as opposed to kind of like dissecting why the incident happened in the first place. And then about Mountain Muskox, which is a peer support group that has been born from one of the incidents that I was involved in. Great. So 2013, I had quit university. How many of you quit university? How many of you quit university to pursue outdoor pursuits? Yeah, okay. So I had done that in about 2000. Parts of BC and part of my life. And in March of of you familiar with the area, it's just north of Caslow, so also in the Selkirk Mountains. And without making it a long story, essentially we were up for a big day. We'd done our due diligence day before, digging lots of pits, figuring out what was going to be appropriate in terms of objectives for our week there. And we had decided that with the avalanche forecast of moderate in the Alpine, and I want to just make a caveat that it was a new moderate, so we had been in considerable for a while. It had gone down to moderate. Good weather. There had been a persistent weak layer of sun crust and surface hoar that had kind of recently been taken off the list of problems, and we had not been able to find it in any of our pits that we dug in the area. also had friends who weren't necessarily part of the ski community that supported me as well. It was the end of the season, more or less, so it wasn't like I was looking at tons of photos for the next 6 months of people doing lots of skiing, getting POW shots, etc., which did kind of help, and it reduced the pressure of people telling me I needed to get back on the horse because I also had a broken leg that I was dealing with. The other thing too is, that time of life, early mid-20s, there weren't a lot of other stressors going on for me. I wasn't working, I was working seasonally, didn't have a ton of responsibility. And so I was able to focus mostly on myself and my recovery. Cons, limited financial resources. I mean, how many of you living in Revelstoke feel like you have limited financial resources? Raise your hand. Raise them high. Yeah, I'd say that is definitely, especially if you've chosen more or less the ski bum lifestyle, that's probably a fairly common factor for many of us, which isn't conducive to then seeking out help that's like not covered by MSP, such as psychological counseling. Shame. So shame at having obviously been caught in an avalanche and making decisions that led to that event. I had aspirations to become a guide. I wanted to be mountains, and kind of having an avalanche is one of the biggest things that tells you that, wow, you really messed up, right? There's a lot of different things that can lead to it, but at the end of the day, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's on you. There's a big bunch of questioning whether I belonged in the outdoors now that I had become one of those people that, it's kind of a before and after scenario. There's before, when you're innocent and like everything about skiing is just fun. And then there's after, when you realize like this thing that you get so much joy from can also cause a lot of pain and damage. After that event and recovery, I ended up kind of doubling down on wanting to learn more about the outdoors, working in avalanche terrain, and becoming more professionally certified. So I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to work as a practicum at one of our local ski lodges, where I then ended up pursuing my apprentice ski guide the next year and continuing on to work there for 7 seasons, which was extremely amazing mentorship, which we talked about earlier this evening, and getting even more embedded in the outdoor community. So that event, I would say, almost triggered like a deepening response to being able to become more educated and connect with others who had had similar experiences. It was amazing the number of people after I had shared my story that came up to me. Like, these are people who had been in the industry for like over 20 years and said, yeah, I remember when I had my first avalanche, or I remember when I made a decision that I wasn't proud of, or that resulted in something bad. And I had never heard these stories before. Fast forward another few years, where I was working didn't really work out so great towards the end. And so I had recently quit my job. I'd been thinking about pursuing kind of the next level of training in terms of becoming a mountain guide. So decided, well, maybe I should check out this ice climbing thing, because powder skiing isn't fun enough. Anyone here an ice climber? It's Revelstoke, so you really got to raise your hands. Yeah, 1 or 2. Great. Good to meet you. So I signed up for a women's ice climbing course, which had been running as a thing for many, many years with some of the like top ice climbers in North America. We were a group that had already done a day of ice climbing, kind of cragging, refreshing skills, etc., for the guides to be able to determine sort of what our next objective was going to be for the day, because it was about, I think it was a 4-day course. So every day we were wanting to kind of learn and be pushing ourselves and be challenged in a supportive environment. So I was in a group of people who were kind of keen to learn how to lead ice climbing. So our group on the second day, we were going to be going to Massey's, which is a WI4, kind of starts out with a bit of a steeper pitch into more rambly terrain. So it's really great for folks who can handle some harder climbing, but then gives them a chance to maybe try out leading on pre-placed screws, which is what we did. We got down from the climb and we were kind of wrapping up at the base. We were there by about 2 p.m. and the forecast. So first thing, Massey's is in an avalanche path, as many of the climbs in the Canadian Rockies are. And with ice climbing, we're not usually so concerned, at least in a terrain like this, about triggering an avalanche ourselves. We're more concerned about natural triggers coming from above. This is the terrain that we're looking at. So we have Mount Stephen. This is all the terrain that is above you, and then it kind of funnels into this. This is actually pretty low angle, like we're talking less than 30 degrees. And then this is where the ice climb was down here, so well below tree line. Again, the hazard in the Alpine was moderate, and it was low at tree line and below tree line. It was after a prolonged period of cold, and we were kind of just at the front end of a storm that was coming in. So we hadn't really gotten more than 4 centimeters of snow in the last week, and temperatures were slowly starting to rise. So in terms of avalanche hazard, we were not concerned. Like Massey's isn't a climb that has frequent avalanches on it. It's like maybe 1 or 2 every 10 years that actually reach the bottom. So at the end of the day, or the end of the day being kind of like 2 p.m., so not that late, we were gathered at the base of the ice climb, which you can see up here. We were kind of tucked in by a cave, and at the bottom of the curtain, there was one of the guests/students that was interested in working on V-threads, which is where you use an ice screw to make a connected hole in the ice that you can then rappel from. So we were working on that, and meanwhile, another group was coming back from a climb that they had been doing kind of further down the highway. So they were driving back along the highway, which is over here, field, crossing this when they saw a powder cloud. And they saw the powder cloud. He was also the owner of the company, phoned the other guide that was standing at the base of the climb, wrapping up all our gear. We had avalanche gear with us in our packs. We were all wearing transceivers, and basically started yelling over the phone that there was an avalanche. The guide yelled right away. Most of us were busy doing other things at the base of the climb. We just heard yelling and kind of realized that it was an avalanche that was coming down over top of us. I was with the group that was right at the base, so we essentially huddled next to the ice right here, and the power of that avalanche was like nothing I had experienced before, even having been in an avalanche. It was like an endless shower of snow over top of it with such suction that you were actually getting pulled away from the wall while you were getting buried from the feet up. One of the people that was kind of huddling just next to me lifted her head up just slightly to take a breath and was swept away. Another person who had been standing just a few meters away from the base of the cliff was also swept away and ended up down here, buried under 1.8 meters of snow. The one who had lifted her head up was buried around here with her hand sticking out. So once the snow had stopped, there were 4 of us on the surface, and 2 didn't know where they were. So turning our transceivers to search, we were able to locate them. The person with their hand and face sticking out was okay, uninjured, but stuck in the snow. Our avalanche gear was gone. Couldn't find the backpacks. Realizing that there was someone with sticks, fingernails, anything we could to get them out. Time starts to warp when you're in a scenario like that. You don't know if you've been digging for 30 seconds or 3 hours. It turned out that we actually got her out in less than 40 minutes, even though she was buried that deep. And if any of you have done digging practice with shovels, you can probably appreciate what that actually took to do that. She didn't have snow in her airway, luckily, but she wasn't breathing on her own, and we started CPR right away. This photo was taken from the rescue that the guide who had called our guide to warn us of the avalanche had initiated while she was running along the train tracks as fast as she could with avalanche gear. Here's us doing CPR, and then this is a little person letting the helicopter know that we're there. The person who was buried was airlifted out, taken to STARS. They were able to reinitiate a heartbeat, but she later died of injuries in the hospital. Was able to donate organs, but it was a fatality that day. Needless to say, the camp ended. We were all back, and may know any fatality, the coroner gets involved. So you don't get to just spend time grieving with your friends. You start getting asked questions about what happened, and you have to, the authorities are alerted. It's a policeman that ends up at your door, which is all of what happened for us. Everyone was distraught, so some of the guides went to the hospital in Foothills to be with the person who was there. And for most of us at the camp, we were kind of left to our own devices. So for me, as someone who'd kind of been through this scenario, some version of it at least, 6 years before, I wasn't physically injured this time. Woohoo! I was able to help others involved because I kind of understood that there was going to be an emotional and psychological aftermath to this event. So I called our guiding association and asked that we were able to get EMDR, that the people involved were able to access post-incident support. And in my mind, that was like the guides who were responsible for us because they were the ones who were going to be most affected. Yeah, so not being in a position of responsibility, I thought, okay, that's going to mean I'm not as affected by this. Some cons from this one, obviously, there was a fatality. One thing that I really overlooked at this point in my life was that I was experiencing multiple overlapping stressors. I'd already had an experience like this. I'd recently quit my job in a toxic workplace. The night before, I'd gotten a call that a student that I'd spent 6 weeks with that summer on an Outward Bound course was recently killed in an airplane crash on the way to a UN conference in Nigeria, which was pretty heavy news to get as well. I was working outside. It was March, which for me is kind of a shitty month because that's when most of these incidents have happened to me. And there wasn't really a chance to just be like, okay, I'm going to take the rest of the time off because I still have a mortgage to pay. You know, remember the whole financial stressors as well. It's there still. But despite all that, I wasn't conscious that that was a mitigating or affecting factor. And I just thought that, well, how can I be affected? You know, I wasn't super close with the victim. I wasn't in a position of responsibility. I'm not physically injured. So I'm just going to focus on supporting the other people that are showing more immediate signs of distress. I spent 3 days with the guide that was kind of most directly affected by this, staying with her at her house, making sure that she was getting support. And unfortunately, the person who was buried but uninjured was really upset about how everything rolled out. There was no kind of debrief that involved everyone. Everyone was spread out across North America. And it started becoming almost like a mudslinging contest with them really attacking the guides involved that day, questioning why we were there, looking into all the information that was available. And it became super toxic. And so every time we thought it was like, okay, we can finally move on from this and start to heal, there would be something else that came up that kind of dragged us all back into the mud, so to speak. So that lasted for almost 2 years until there was no more threat of a lawsuit after the 2-year timeline, which is also something that you may or may not understand the statute of limitations. The other thing is that when these things happen in the environments that we find so much joy, purpose, potentially work as well, is that we often continue to choose to go into those environments without always recognizing that we're then continually exposing ourselves to the environment that caused the trauma or the stress in the first place. I didn't realize that. I just thought, okay, I'm working, I'm a guide, I need to get back on the horse and keep doing what I love. So this was the question that I kept asking myself. what's wrong with me that even though I wasn't injured, I'm not in a position of responsibility, I still can't get over the fact, and I'm catastrophizing every time I went out to ski, climb, do anything in the mountains where there could be a hazard. I could just instantly visualize the worst case scenario because that was my lived experience. I was part of the worst case scenario. So I could see it everywhere. I did all the things that I knew how to try to get over it. I went to counseling. I spent time with friends. I took a little break, but not very long. And I just thought I need to keep getting back out there. I need to keep getting that out there. And I wasn't feeling better. In a lot of cases, my symptoms were just getting worse. I was even more scared. Ask my partner, I was not a great person to be around. So if I'm using all my tools and I'm still not feeling better, like what are my options? I didn't see quitting guiding and everything that I'd worked for as an option. And so I wanted to find something else. Enter Mountain Muskox. So the guide whose course that was where the accident happened also went through their own journey. They were obviously extremely torn up. They were super close to the person that died. And they went to therapy as well. But the therapist there kind of realized that you could only go so far in individual therapy, and that the healing that was required for people like us actually needs to happen in community with people who understand, who get it, why we go out there. Because that's often something that you'll get in therapy is like, well, if it's the place that's triggering you, why don't you just stop going? And I'm guessing for many of you in this room, not going to the mountains would kind of be like asking you not to breathe. So Sarah decided to try an idea, which was to bring people together who had experienced mountain trauma or loss and see if there was a way that we could heal together. So the mission is a community to support and care for those who have been impacted by loss or trauma in the mountains. It doesn't need to have been your accident. It doesn't need to have been you that was injured. If you're part of the mountain community and you have folks around you that have been affected, you can consider yourself in this category. We want to create and foster a healing community and global network that understands mountain trauma because it's still not something that we're very good at. Again, we're so good at forecasting avalanches. We're so good at talking about the problems that we might see in the snowpack, but we're still learning how to talk about these things after an accident happens. So what Mountain Muskox has done is that we're offering monthly peer support circles for people who have been impacted by loss or trauma in the mountains. They're professionally facilitated, so you're given tools and opportunities to discuss not just what's happened to you, but ways that you're finding to cope. And the amazing thing is that you feel a lot less alone. It's just like I was saying when I was like, why am I not getting better? I'm doing all these things and I still can't stop catastrophizing every time I'm out in the mountains. Turns out I'm not the only one that was feeling that way. So it's for recreationalists, it's for professionals, people who have directly or indirectly experienced trauma or loss in the mountain community. And it doesn't have to be recent. Like I said, there can be compounding incidents. You might have been involved in an avalanche 15 years ago. That was like no big deal. And then something happens to you and all of a sudden you're getting recurring nightmares or visions of what happened 15 years ago. And that's okay. Trauma lives in the body and it doesn't have a timeline. So being understood, reconnecting, recalibrating, those are all the goals and what happens in these support circles. Right now, we've got chapters in the Bow Valley. There's a pilot project happening in Whistler, Squamish, the Columbia Valley, and the Kootenays. The circles are in person. They're once a month. They're free of charge to help reduce barriers. They're professionally and you don't have to share. You can just share others. There's no obligation to say anything or to participate in other ways than just showing up. If this sounds like something that might be of benefit to you or someone that you know, check us out. mountainmuskox.com. Lots of information there. We do have an Instagram at Mountain Muskox. Tell a friend. And my vision, as well as others in this community, is to be able to start a Revelstoke chapter. I think we can probably all agree that we have people in our community that would really benefit from this. And to be able to have a resource like this in our town, I think could make a huge difference to many people's lives. So this survey is basically a way that we can gauge interest. Is it 3 people who would show up? Is it 30 people who are interested? It's a lot of work to start a chapter, but it's so worth it if it means that we can help people in our community enjoy their lives more fully and reconnect with whatever brings them joy. So thank you so much for being here, for letting me share my stories. And yeah, make sure to tell a friend, take the survey, and take care of each other out there, not just before you go skiing, but also after people come home.
Yeah, way to pour your heart out there. I told you she'd be badass. Thanks a lot for showing up, you guys. Massive props to Taylor for putting this all together. And wasn't that cool, Ben, putting all that experience together for this presentation? Thanks a lot, Ben. And obviously, of course, Madeleine. Yeah, we're kind of trying to pour our heart out there to give you guys resources. Thanks so much for showing up. Means a lot that this place was totally packed. We'll be hanging out, just sort of tidying things up if you have any other further questions, but we're going to be doing this once a month. So thanks a lot, y'all. And thanks a ton for the Legion for hosting us. Cheers.